Okay, I think it's time we made a start. So welcome to this event hosted by ILIG, which is CILIP's international group. I really ought to be able to say CILIP by this time. The talk will be recorded, as you've just seen, so do bear that in mind when participating. For those who don't know me, my name's Leslie Pittman, and I'm the current chair of ILIG. I'm absolutely delighted that we have persuaded our current vice chair, Aidan Baker, to talk to us today. Until his retirement in October 2020, Aidan had spent a grand total of 38 years, according to his LinkedIn profile, as a librarian at the University of Cambridge, most recently as the Haddon librarian, responsible for a specialist library focusing on archaeology and anthropology. Since retiring, Aidan has become involved in the extraordinary phenomenon that is Byline Times. He has been an editorial contributor at East Anglian Byline Times for the last 3 years, and he is going to talk to us today about citizen journalism. There will be time for questions at the end, but if you think of any as we're going through, do pop them in the chat and I'll keep an eye on that, or just raise your hand at the end. So without more ado, over to Aidan.
Thank you very much. And here we go, sharing the screen, sharing that particular screen. Click on share, and we want the slideshow. Start from the first slide. There now. And I think I've got this right. Can you all see that title, Citizen Journalism, what it is, why it is, and how I got involved?
We can't see the top of the slide. It just says is and how I got involved.
What I think I better do then is go back to this version here. Okay. It means you get the works, so to speak, around the slide, but at least you can see the whole of the slide. And let's see, can I expand this screen at all? Yes, I think I can. There now. Right. Will that do?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's fine.
So, yeah. Well, let's move on there. Move on. Yeah. Citizen journalism. Well, citizen journalism. There's the Wikipedia article about it. It places citizen journalism amid a plethora of confusables. That's a view of citizen journalism in Syria. It's nothing like as tough as that in East Anglia, I can tell you. I mean, that's a mound of troubles, and Norfolk is famously very flat. But it's the inspiration, what people in tougher countries have done. Ultimately, amid the confusables, community journalism, civic journalism, collaborative journalism, social journalism, citizen journalism, I think it has overtones of civic responsibility and of doing it because it's the way of doing it, you know, because it's a way of being civically responsible. And the reason why it's become such a thing, even in this country where obviously we're in nowhere near the kind of trouble Syria's had, are things like this. I mean, I hope you can all see that. That's a view of how regional media in this country has declined, even over the last 15 or 16 years. That if you look, the middle column tells you how it was in 2007, and the right-hand column tells you how it was in 2022. And this is from a report published in 2024. You know, I don't have anything more recent than this. And basically on every metric, things are down to about a third of what they were. The number of firms that are actually active in owning and operating regional media, and this is, you know, this, I fear, is because the big ones have swallowed up the smaller ones, and the amount of money that comes in as a result of it, and the number of journalists, as you can see, who are actually employed in regional media. And there's a similar, well, I can't tell you a story like quite, oh dear, come on. I can't tell you a story quite like that. What I can do, though, is give you the state of things, that the national newspaper market is dominated by just 3 huge organizations. 2/3 of the online platforms that are used for access for news are dominated by another 3 big corporations. And video on demand subscriptions are dominated by 3 huge corporations. And it's not such a good thing. Not quite so clear in this slide as in some I've seen. But the bias of the mainstream media is pretty well known. I mean, Telegraph, Mail, Sun, Express, Times. Somebody wanting admission, and it falls to me to do that. Okay. I don't think you could describe them exactly as progressive. Now, yes, let's be frank about this. Calling something citizen journalism doesn't necessarily mean that it's a saintly operation. I mean, this chap describes himself as a journalist. He's even won prizes for it from one source, but I don't think all of us would see him as a virtuous individual. And as it happens, the particular outlet that I'm involved with has its own axes to grind. I mean, that's an anti-Brexit march, and no, the picture's not by me. I think I was on that particular march, but the picture's not by me. We can attribute partly to this chap, Mike Goldsworthy. He is a research scientist. He was also, following Brexit, the founder of an organization called Scientists for EU. On his Twitter bio, he puts that last of all before his founding of Bylines Network. Now, Bylines Network is a sort of movement. If you look at this newsstand again, you'll see there is a thing called Byline Times. And yes, we're associated with them, but separate from them. Mike Goldsworthy is named among the founders of Byline Times, but we're not controlled by them, but we're happy to share the name and to market them and so on. Mike founded this separate thing, the Bylines Network. It's a network all over the country of regional online news outlets. Mike began this in, I think, 2020 with Yorkshire Bylines, and there were very quickly others all over the country. And I promised to tell you how I got involved. Well, this bit I needn't say much about. This is the library where I was librarian for 30 years, having worked as assistant librarian there for 8 years before that. The Haddon Library of Archaeology and Anthropology in Cambridge. That's a photograph I took of it the week before lockdown 2020. Another thing I've been involved with, and I'm still involved with, an organization called Global Justice Now. it's a campaigning organisation which operate campaigns on rich world, poor world questions. That's me at a stall in 2017. I can't remember who took the photograph. It won't have been me. But there it is. But at all events, it was through the Cambridge group of Global Justice Now that I first heard of East Anglia bylines. We had a member who was a member of Global Justice Cambridge who was interested, and he passed on the news that it was to be set up. And I put my name forward, and I offered to, oh, come on. Yeah, I offered to write about archaeology. I offered to interview archaeologists, and I offered to interview poets as well. This book, I don't know if you can read the title from where you are. It was called Places of Poetry, and it was based on an enterprise that had people posting poems they'd written to do with places. And there were a good many poets who posted poems to do with places in East Anglia. And the third strand I offered, I have an interest in hymn tunes that are named after places, and there are quite a few of those in East Anglia. I don't know if you can recognize that place. It's actually Thaxted. Thaxted gave its name to the hymn tune, the hymn tune Thaxted, obviously, that is used for the hymn "I Vow to Thee, My Country," the patriotic hymn "I Vow to Thee, My Country." And I said I could write about things like that. And well, they took me on, and that's my author bio in East Anglia Bylines. And it says where I've been and what I've done and what I'm doing now and so on. And, well, I've produced quite a lot of stuff for East Anglia Bylines. I've written about hymn tunes. I've written about 9 or 10 articles now. No, about 7 articles about 9 or 10 tunes. Some places have more than one tune named after them. And those are the articles. And I've done a lot of interviews, and not all with poets in East Anglia. Done a couple with them, but I've interviewed an asylum seeker from Downham Market, and interviewed a German virologist about their response to COVID and how it was different from the UK's response to COVID, and how they got theirs respectively better than ours, not spectacularly better, but respectively better. And some of you may remember this article, which I wrote just after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I quoted from the ILIG statement on the war quite extensively. And I took a look at what libraries in East Anglia were doing about the war in Ukraine, and that was very interesting. This is one area where the work of East Anglia Bylines does actually touch libraries. We're able to interview librarians. I haven't interviewed any more since then, but if any of you are interested, I'd be happy to do so. And also, some of the writing I do, it involves libraries that I used for my research. That's the Essex Record Office. When I wrote the article about Saffron Walden, I needed, hang on, I had to let somebody in. I needed to do some research at Essex Record Office, and they were actually extremely helpful. And yes, I do some of the writing for East Anglia Bylines. I do some of the copy editing, proofreading, and occasionally uploading I'm not sure that I pull my weight, but within the team, there are some who do a lot of that. And now, what's this next one? Yes. We have a regional focus, we have an international focus. And this series of, since our, the thing that kick-started us was Brexit, a thing that we are much interested in is the effects of Brexit on people and communities in East Anglia, and also how Brexit Britain looks from the EU. And we have a series that publishes on Friday mornings. This was one of the first by a Danish professor about that very thing. UK can't rejoin the EU. We, meaning in this case Britain, even though he's looking at from Denmark, we have to start from scratch. And we flatter ourselves that publishing things like that does actually influence the rejoin movement, and that we're not simply a phrase that one member of our team likes to use is hand-wringing. He deplores hand-wringing. He likes to think that we're doing something more than simply hand-wringing about how bad things are. Here are some things we've published, and with actually the team member I mentioned, Peter Thurlow, he's very good at finding exclusives, getting to. He was a journalist with an East Anglian paper for a number of years. He's got the knack, which most of us haven't got, of finding out exclusive stories. But these are picked up by mainstream media afterwards. This top one was about. It was about where election leaflets were found. They were advising readers how to register for postal votes if they wanted to, and that's good. But the readers had to send were invited to send these things back to the local Tory party rather than to the electoral office. This other thing in Ipswich was when there was there were rumours about people being actually restricted in their movements, and this led to an angry crowd confronting the council. Let's move on to this next one. These are where stories that we've covered. As you notice that Peter's only done one of these. Stacey Richards is a journalist. Well, she's with us. We like to think of her as a citizen journalist. She's had a lot of mentoring from Peter. Kate Moore is a member of the editorial team, and she went on a cruise to Norway and got into an adventure. And this was, well, we covered it, and media across the Atlantic were interested in picking this up and running with it. We were quite proud of that. This was, well, here again are another couple more of Peter's stories. I think he was involved in all three of these. The claims of election law breaches by council over voter ID. This was about how you had to show ID, obviously. We all had to show vote ID when coming to vote, and the idea, the intent, or the official intention was that people who didn't have voter ID should be counted, so that everybody would know how serious the effects of this new regulation were. And at several polling stations, it emerged that polling clerks and greeters had been briefed to turn people away rather than let them come to the desk. This was to reduce paperwork officially, but it did seem to us to be a means of reducing the effect of the change in voter ID regulations, and that was picked up again by mainstream media. And we like to think that our impact on the mainstream media is of that kind, that we're actually contributing to them. We're regulated by Impress, the independent monitor for the press, which is a sort of rival to IPSO, the Independent Press Standards Organization. Impress is recognized by the Press Regulation Panel, as IPSO is not. I mean, there are controversies about both of these. Impress regulates a number of small local press outlets, and also progressive things like New Internationalist and Squawk Box, and we're signed up to it as well. And they don't offer training so we can't claim to have been, as far as I know, they don't offer training. We can't claim to have been through the National Council for the Training of Journalists procedure, but we do succeed in getting ourselves trained by people who are willing to offer freelance training. There was an online course, an online session in defamation training last week that we signed up to, and I went through it and picked up a lot. Reminded me of the 23 things training that librarians had been through, training themselves. And I can say that my experience as a librarian, this is how has fed quite a lot into my experience with East Anglia bylines. I've in terms of things like seeking images and Creative Commons, that sort of thing, and copyright generally. We get a few tweets in our praise. We get insulting tweets. In the nature of things, the tweets in our praise are things that self-serving bias keeps me remembering, though I don't remember them verbatim. I just remember that there are, and I like to think that that's how people think of us. We do get insulting tweets. I mean, sometimes we've been known as a kind of Waitrose Squawk Box. We've been described as tuppenny journalists. We've had tweets asking who would buy lefty academics, perhaps. And people tweet things like bylines can banner whatever way they like. You're still an agenda-driven propaganda site peddling lies while ignoring anything that doesn't carry the agenda's narrative. That is, I'm afraid, likely to stick with me, even though it's in my view not particularly fair. Anyway, that's where we are now, and I can tell you a little bit about the future. Not much. My future, well, I don't know if you know Google. Those are places in East Anglia with hymn tunes, and I can tell you that there are more of them. Google Maps is very disappointing, I find, when when I've loaded them with as many hymn tune places as I have done. They don't show as many as I'd like, even though they keep the list. And there are lots of hymn tunes I haven't written about and that aren't shown on that map that I'm going to write about. and we're always on the lookout for material. And if you have any, we're looking for it. We have a political gossip column which appears on Saturdays. It's called Pecksniff, and if you'd like to, if you hear of anything about politicians in East Anglia, we'd be happy to hear from you. And if you hear about things happening in your area, or rather, if you hear about international things, and this particular group, of course, is going to be more international minded than most. And if you hear of things worldwide or things in Europe that might feed into our Friday series, Our Place in Europe, again, we'd be very happy to hear from you. And also, I mentioned East Anglia, I mentioned the rest of the world, with particular reference to the European Union, but it's possible that your region in the UK, if you are in the UK, and I know not all members of this particular audience are, if you have a region in the UK that you acknowledge, there's probably a bylines for it. There isn't. There are still some uncovered places, but there's probably a bylines for it. And as with this shrunk version of as you obviously can't click on this slide presentation, here is that's the QR code for that slide, and if I'm sure everyone here knows how to cope with QR codes, so that if you that will take you to that map, and the map will take you to your regional bylines. So I will leave that up there, and I have come to the end of my talk, and if there are questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Does anybody? Thank you so much, Aidan, for that, which was fascinating. Does anybody have any questions for Aidan? If so, raise your hand now.
Shall I stop sharing? There's a limit to
Yeah, well, yes, do. Yes. Perhaps if you can circulate your slides, I'm sure people would appreciate that, and then they can click on the QR code in the privacy of.
Yes.
We are in our own homes, you know what I mean?
Yes.
When convenient. So now, does anybody have any questions for Aidan? Jill.
Hi, Aidan. Do you have complete freedom as to what you can cover personally? Can you choose, or is there some guidance from kind of editorial board or?
Well, I'm a member of the editorial team of East Anglia Bylines. It very rarely, we meet once a week by Zoom, and we have a Trello board on which suggestions for articles are mounted, and we consider them then, and we decide whether we're going to commission or not, and the article makes its way through the Trello board. And so, well, I would say that within those constraints we are free. We've got a reasonable idea of the sort of thing we want. We have quite animated discussions about what actually that means, and we end up with a decision as to whether we're going to commission an article pitch or not.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat from Anne. Do you think that the flick through technology is causing people to lose the art of reading? Now, I know you don't just write for Byline Times, so.
Well, I have heard that said. I fear this might be the case, but I don't have any evidence. I myself make a point of reading a book. You know, I try to read half an hour every day in a book. The flick through technology, I have to answer pass on that, because this isn't a question I've looked at properly, and subjectively I would say yes, I have to make the effort to read a book. I read lots of poetry magazines. I read books rather less often, but I've usually got a book on the go that I'm reading. And my birthday and Christmas presents to friends and kin tend to be books. So yes, I'll leave it at that. I can't answer a straight yes or no, because I haven't.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one about libraries. So do libraries collect byline times? Is byline times archived anywhere? Should library staff who want to keep us informed about what is happening in the world be recommending byline times?
I certainly think they should. I have a paper subscription to it at home. I seem to remember that the advertisement for this event that we put on CILIP, we used a picture of byline times in a library with permission of the librarian who had taken that picture. So yes, I would definitely say, I would definitely very strongly encourage libraries to subscribe to byline times.
But I suppose I'm asking, are they? Is there a will it get into the British Newspaper Archive? How are initiatives like this going to be accessible in 20 years' time?
Well, byline times is published as paper. It's sent to libraries that would be receiving it in that way.
Copyright copies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far as I know, yes. There is an online version also.
Okay, so thank you. So with luck. And the UK Web Archive, presumably, if we ever again see the UK Web Archive, should contain the electronic copies.
It should.
I hope so. Okay, fingers crossed for that then. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. This is fascinating. About a month ago, I started or found out somehow, I forget, about an initiative in the Midlands, the Birmingham Dispatch, which is an email of news daily, to which one can subscribe for a fuller version. So you get headlines and short summaries. And I'm just at the moment, literally today, thinking, oh, maybe I'll go for it, because that's a subscription payment for the Birmingham Dispatch. And I wondered if you'd come across it. I've just looked at the page for the central bylines, and it's I just saw the front page and lots of images and so on. Happy for those who flick over things. There's lots of pictures. But yeah, it all looks really interesting. But I don't know if you come across the Birmingham Dispatch or whether it's connected, or I don't think so. There was no reference to it so far.
Right, it's not connected. I have heard of it, certainly. Yeah, but that's all, I'm afraid.
I think if it's of interest, I think it is actual or would-be journalists rather than citizens. So I think it's people who think a bit like you were describing the media, the print media at the beginning being fairly restricted in its range. People looking for an alternative and progressive approach, judging by these first couple of weeks that I've been following it.
Yeah, there's something of the kind here near Cambridge. Now I've forgotten the title of the journal. I think it's Cambridge News. No, it's not. It's that John Elworthy is involved with. That Peter Thurlow, whom I was telling you about in the talk, he's often directed as with approval to John Elworthy's work. And what you're describing in Birmingham sounds very similar.
Yeah, if I can have another moment. One of the reasons I'm interested is because I'm involved with Amnesty International and the Bourneville group in Birmingham. But Amnesty Central England, which is East, West, and South Midlands, down from up here in Shropshire, Staffordshire, as far as Oxfordshire. I've just formed an online network to bring people together who can normally only meet in local groups in their neighborhood or their town or whatever. And I'm leading a strand of that on asylum seekers and refugees with a view to working on the public perception of that group. It was interesting. You referenced some refugee interviews there in I think you said Downham Market for that one. I go to Norfolk quite a lot for holidays, and the aim of the group in terms of changing public attitudes is to reach a lot of people and inform them more fully. And so if we can overcome the irrational with the rational and with information, that's not always easy as it sounds. But part of the aim is to change public attitudes. And I wondered if outlets like this would be something we could approach with a view to publishing interesting articles, personal stories, accurate information, that sort of stuff.
Please do. Please do. When you say outlets like this, are you referring to the Birmingham Dispatch or to Central?
To Central and the other from the slide you had, the other. So I'm getting all the names crossing other bylines in other parts of the different parts of the country, because although we're Central England, I mean, public attitudes are everywhere in a sort of continuum.
Please do, and I think I can say that. Yeah, I think they would thank me for saying that. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Excellent. We're drumming up some business for you. There's another comment from Anne in the chat. She says, I subscribe to Tortoise Media, which I don't know if you've heard of, which is online and produced by independent journalists. This avoids the big photo that seems to accompany many BBC and other news products and gets to the meat of an issue. With Facebook, etc., I guess these products stream news in ways that getting newspapers to readers is less successful, and they allow citizens to take part. So I don't know if that's a familiar title to you and a familiar model.
Yeah, I've heard of it, certainly. Again, in fact, well, I know Tortoise Media better than I know the Birmingham Dispatch. I've often, no, not often, I've from time to time consulted Tortoise Media stories, and found them informative.
Thank you. Any more questions? I've just got one more, which is, how do you market Byline Times? How would you make sure it reached individuals and libraries across the region or across the country?
We have a huge social media presence. I do most of the tweets, and I copy them to Mastodon. And there's also now, the editor-in-chief of East Anglia Bylines is Anna Damsky, and she does much more tweeting than I do, and a lot of Facebook pushing as well. And she's done marvels for our hit rate, and I would, yes, we've got Twitter, Facebook, Mastodon, Threads. We're beginning to dip our toe in blue sky, if that isn't a mixed metaphor. And so, yes, we make ourselves known that way. And, you know, I talk to people about it, and I seek interviews with people, and I hope that the people I interview are interested in you know, find an interest in what has interviewed them.
Excellent. There's another question from Anne. If local papers are declining, is this telling us that people are no longer interested in local news and views? What's your experience?
I hope that isn't the case, but yes, this is a question that occurred to me as I was pointing to that table showing the decline of local media. I don't know what the answer is, because local social media appears to be thriving. Things like my suburb of Cambridge, Cherry Hinton, has a next door group, and it's got lots of Facebook groups. It's got WhatsApp groups and so on. Maybe the truth is that it's not so much that interest in local news is declining as that people are looking to communicate it and learn of it in different ways. I don't know.
But of course, that the content coming through those routes is completely unfiltered. Yes. And certainly wouldn't meet any type of journalistic standard, or sometimes any standard at all. So it is a slightly different beast, isn't it?
It is. Oh, and what we can do about it if people are losing interest in local news and views, I don't know. It's an ancient conundrum, isn't it? How far media influence people, and if I don't. Yes,
it's a big question. I think we don't. Ian, you have a question.
Yeah. So how does Britain compare internationally? I get the feeling when I travel extensively in Belgium, Germany, and Scandinavia, and I feel their local papers report news better than ours. A lot of our papers are opinion, and certainly their daily papers seem to be more news. And so, is an organisation like yours sort of fight against our poor press?
Well, fight against it, I don't know. We have described some of the complexities of our relationship with our poor press. We aim to make good the shortcomings, put it that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm meaning, yeah. And, you know, I've no idea, apart from, as I say, reading the papers when I go to friends and relatives. And it does seem to be more. I once we looked at all the papers that were coming into Brussels, and 7 Europeans had the same headlines, and the British papers had totally different headlines. And that sort of suggests often that Britain is out on a limb, that something on Coronation Street is seen as more important than something that might have happened in Rome. And that's one of the things I find with our press. You know, it's ephemeral items seem to take real precedence.
They mustn't have a royal family.
Yes, royal family. And the other thing was football. When I was there, there'd been a riot at, you know, one of the football matches, and that was headline news on all our press. And yet, of course, it didn't get a mention in Europe.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think you started off by talking a bit about bias in terms of the mainstream media, and of course the bias that is behind Byline Times. You know, there's not necessarily anything wrong with bias.
We describe ourselves
something we have to recognise.
Oh yes, I'm not criticising it by any means. it's doing a good job, and it's what needs in this country, probably more than in the other countries.
Right. Well, thanks. It's yeah, but we call ourselves left of centre.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know, you look at the newspapers in America, and they're roughly 50-50 split. There's some very, very Republican ones, but that's balanced in the States. Whereas here we've got the sort of equivalent to the very, very Republican ones, and very little balance on the other side.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm.
That's true.
Are you aware? Sorry, Aidan, go on.
No, you carry on.
Are you aware of any similar initiatives from different perspectives, or are you finding that they tend to grow up more in social media and in closed groups and are less? An impression I get is that they are less open to scrutiny than something like Byline Times.
I would think of something like Guido Fawkes as
Yeah.
a right wing,
Mm.
and I've seen others, though their names elude me at the moment. I looked for his name on the impress list, and I don't think I found it. But I could have another look and look now.
But he might just call himself a blogger, which is
Yeah,
a
he might well. He might
yeah. I
well.
was thinking slightly more of more right-wing organisations.
I don't know of anything that takes a right-wing equivalent to our communitarian view. You know, I don't think I don't know of anything that's set up. You know, that's set up regionally as we are.
Okay, I suspect they engage with their audience through a slightly different route. John, you've got an electronic hand up.
I have indeed. Just a quick, I may have missed this, but do you know the level of readership or take-up? In my first point, and the other thing that crossed my mind is whether, again, thinking about changing public views, and looking at the central one and your own information, you know, the Brexit line and so on and so forth, the progressive approach, or policies, whether you know, whether it's like, you know, Guardian readers, Radio 4 listeners, it's people who already believe the same things, or whether you're aware that you reach and persuade or draw in or shift views among people who are not holding that sort of, not on that part of the spectrum, if you like, of right to left.
Right. Well, answering the first question, I don't know if I can share this. Let's have a look. We do every week look at how our articles have gone down. So we're to that extent, we're aware of the figures. Now, where can I find this? Perhaps it might be better if I looked in my email. We meet those Zoom meetings once a week by of the editorial team. Let's have a look at whoop. Right, this is now. I have opened, I'm not sharing the screen at the moment. Let me get back into Zoom, and if I may, I'll share the screen. Host it. Okay. I won't share the screen. I'll read it out. So we had 6,166 views last week from 4,095 visitors. So the average number of views per post last week was 561. we had 1,025 hits on Twitter, 876 on Facebook, 1,289 on Google. Actually, I think these may, I'm not sure if these are views or no, they're not views, they're referrals to articles. 1,025 from Twitter, 876 from Facebook, 1,289 from Google, and on it goes. The number of individual articles, our top was the interview with Terry Reintke. But the big majority in the EU Parliament would be happy just to have the EU back. That got 937 views. And this is our top 20. The lowest in the top 20 got just 41 views. And a lot of our articles were looked at from week to week. Reaching the unconverted, or those outside the bubble, this is a perennial preoccupation of ours. I can say, you know, it's a thing we talk about pretty much every editorial meeting, and to that extent, when we get instances of the kind I read out earlier, we do feel that we've had some impact. I don't know that we've done as much as we'd like to persuade people of a different view, but it's always in our mind is, are we reaching people different from ourselves?
Do you, just one last question from me, do you interview people of a different view, from a different perspective? Not just you, but
we don't so much look out at them for their difference in perspective, but I can see that would be a good line to pursue. I mean, I've put out I've made a request for an article to a church contact about whose politics I know nothing, and it'll be very interesting to see what the results of that are. I put out in connection with the hymn tunes, or going off at a tangent from hymn tunes, I wrote an article at Christmas time about new Christmas music, and interviewed people according to their involvement in that scene rather than their political opinions. And I interviewed the winner of a carol writing competition, and I know nothing of her politics at all. So yeah, we do go out of, put it this way, but we're conscious that we might be venturing out of the bubble when we do things like that. And when we've interviewed people about Cambridge, it's been about their attitude to the particular questions rather than about their attitude generally, you know.
Okay, because that certainly seems like a way of expanding your reach into other audiences that you might possibly persuade or not. Any more questions? No, I think we've had an absolutely excellent discussion. Thank you so much, Aidan. Oh yes, a message just thanking you from Anne and wishing you a happy retirement. I think it sounds as though you're having an excellent and very productive retirement. So if we can just thank Aidan in the traditional way, and there will be a recording of this session going up on YouTube in due course, and I think Aidan said he could send or arrange for his slides to be sent around as well. And if any of you have anything interesting to contribute to your local By9 Times, you have been given the nod to do so, I think. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Do look out on our various social media channels for news of future events. Thank you.